everybody. I'm Jon Leiberman for HNGN News. This is our continuing segment interviewing members of law enforcement and victims and their victims' family. We have a very special guest tonight in our Crime and Justice special. You submitted questions for him as well. He is Derek VanLuchene. Derek was just 17 years old when his 8-year-old brother was abducted, murdered by a sex offender. Derek went into law enforcement. Now he runs the group Ryan United, which helps victims of violent crimes. Derek, first of all, nice to see you.
Good to see you, John. Thanks for having me on. I appreciate the opportunity.
I should add, Derek is a friend as well, and he's really doing great things. Derek, your brother did not die in vain, did he?
No, he didn't. We work every day to make sure Ryan's name is out there, making sure that we're helping victims and keeping communities safe, all in his name every day.
When your little brother was raped and killed, how did that change you?
You know, John, it just was like a spiderweb effect with the family. It happened. We found out not only that the worst of the worst had happened, my brother had died, but how he died. He was taken right from our backyard by a repeat sex offender. He was brutally raped and killed. And when something like that happens to you, it has a spiderweb effect not only on your family, but on the community and the people that know you. But it made us want to make a difference and change things and hold offenders accountable and make sure laws are tough on offenders. And that's what we try and do every day.
You often hear with victims' families the word closure doesn't exist, but justice does. Do you agree with that sentiment, first of all? And second of all, was there any justice in finding the killer?
You know, justice looks different for everybody. Closure doesn't exist when something happens like this because you just don't one day wake up and say, oh, it's all over, it's in my past. Even years later, you know, my brother was killed in 1987. Even years later, we still continue to deal with things like appeals from his killer. And those things bring up those feelings again. So there's never closure, but there's answers. And talking to different families around the country that I help out, each of them have a different idea of what justice looks like, and we try and bring that to them.
So the killer in your brother's case, here we are, you know, decades later, he's still filing appeals trying to get out of prison?
Yeah, absolutely. He was convicted. He was sentenced to 2 consecutive 100-year terms without the possibility of parole, and he keeps appealing that sentence, saying he should be out, saying that he didn't do it. But John, he's conclusively tied to that crime scene by DNA. There's nobody else's DNA there but his and my brother's. So he's the guy. But his type of offender is so narcissistic that he feels like he can get out of it and he can be a free man again one day.
I wanted to ask you that, you know, what is it that the general public might not understand about being the victim or family member of a victim of such a violent crime?
Well, it varies in people's response. When we tell people what happened, when I tell people what happened to my brother, they react in a couple of different ways. They want to join you, they want to help change, but then some people, you know, sort of shy away from it and don't want to talk about things like that. So people react in different ways, but mostly people that hear our story want to know what they can do to help. They want to know what they can do to protect their community. So we give them resources to do that, to help us out.
I want to get to some of the viewer questions here. The first is, Derek, can you tell us some families you're working with right now and how do they find you?
It's sometimes by word of mouth. Sometimes we'll do a media. We'll be in the media, and somebody will see us, and they'll get a hold of us through our website or through our email. We're working with many families across the country right now. In fact, this afternoon I dealt with a family whose 18-year-old son was sexually molested for years by a nanny, and that boy just disclosed that to his folks, and we're trying to bring that family resources. How can they get that boy help? How can they bring this perpetrator to justice? So we network with law enforcement, we network with the family to try and bring everybody to one table on that case.
Next question is, Since such a horrific thing happened to your brother, does any crime surprise you, Derek?
You know, John, I spent 18 years in law enforcement in the state of Montana, both as a city policeman and as a state agent with the Division of Criminal Investigation. In those capacities, I saw a lot of things, and some of them were just as heinous as what happened to my brother. But yeah, you know, I still things still set me back. Things when I hear in the media that an offender's been let out of prison and allowed to re-victimize, those things really get to me, and those things are they make me angry at first, but then they make me want to further change things. So yeah, I mean, I am surprised still that all these years later we're still letting some of these offenders walk the streets.
This is my question, actually. Then we'll get back. We have a few more viewer questions. But, you know, oftentimes law enforcement gets criticized for not having the best bedside manner. They're not paid to, you know, have a good bedside manner. They're paid, by and large, to solve crimes, to keep the peace. I guess my question for you, Derek, is how did having a tragedy in your own family help you when you were on the law enforcement side of it?
You know, I think it helped me look at things in a different perspective, especially when it came to the victim family. And I don't care what kind of call I responded to. With every crime, as you know, John, there's a victim. And you have to do certain things to address those needs. And like I said before, justice looks different to certain people. It looks different to everybody. So I really had a heightened sense of the fact that I had to help people get their type of justice and help them through it.
Back to the viewer questions. Derek, can sex offenders be rehabilitated?
You know, John, it's proven time and time again that sex offenders, especially those that commit crimes against young boys, there's no way to rehabilitate that person. There's a way to manage them and a way to maybe keep oversight of them, but there's no real way. That person just doesn't wake up and one day and say, you know, I don't feel like doing that anymore. There's no medicine, there's no treatment, there's no anything. Those people you can't rehabilitate. The large majority of sex offenders out there want to do what they're told to do. However, there's a large majority of them that cannot be rehabilitated. So you have to find ways to manage them correctly.
And Derek, final question from our viewers here at HNGN. Why didn't your brother's killer get the death penalty?
You know, John, in our case, it was unfortunate at the time. The law enforcement agency, the state crime lab at the time, they mishandled some evidence. And as a result of that, you know, we were forced to take a plea agreement because the prosecutor was afraid maybe to go to court with the evidence being the way it was and mishandled.
Well, that is unfortunate, Derek. Listen, I want to thank you, Derek VanLuchene, CEO of Ryan United and a friend of mine and a terrific guy. As you heard, a horrific story about his brother, but he is doing good for the community now. Derek, it's great to see you.
It's good to see you, John. Thanks again.
You got it. That's Derek VanLuchene. I want to thank you for watching here at HNGN News. This series will continue. We have a lot more good guests coming up. For now, for HNGN, I'm Jon Leiberman. Thanks for tuning in.